Welcome to the 25th Annual Columbia Values Diversity Celebration. I am Monica Naylor, and I will represent the Event Planning Committee today as the Mistress of Ceremonies. We would like to thank Ben Colagiovanni for the wonderful piano music during our breakfast. Let's give him a hand. Please stand while the Columbia Fire Department Honor Guard presents the colors and we enjoy the singing of our national anthem by Kathy Cox.
Left, face. Present, arm.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight over the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in the air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please remain standing for the honor guard to leave and for an invocation written by members of Faith Voices of Columbia and presented by Reverend Jermaine Alberty, Jean Snodgrass, and Reverend Tim Carson.
Holy One, known by many names and in many ways, we gather this morning as people of many identities, experiences, and understandings of the world to share a time of celebration, reflection, and recommitment to our highest aspirations.
We gather to celebrate the stunning beauty of our difference, to reflect upon our aspirations for unity, and to recommit ourselves to the never-ending work of justice and compassion for all.
We gather to recommit ourselves to the promise of beloved community, proclaimed by prophets of many faiths across generations, preached by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and others in the perpetual struggle for freedom, and practiced in fits and starts whenever we cast a wider circle of inclusion, empathy, and love.
God, help us embrace and create that beloved community together, a community that is faithful to its vision of equity, even when that vision requires sacrifice and reexamination of what we thought we knew.
A community that is resilient in the struggle for justice, in which we try and fail and try again with grace for one another and the willingness to be challenged and changed.
a community that is prophetic in its dream for a better world, a world where each one is able to thrive in freedom, abundance, and mutual flourishing.
Creator, move in our hearts with the movement of hope
and justice
and fierce love
until we are bound together indeed in the work
and the promise
and the joy
of beloved community.
community.
Amen.
Thank you. Now, Diversity Awareness Partnership would like to present information about the Journey Toward Inclusive Excellence by Regional Manager Nikki Magruder.
Good morning. You know, it was at the breakfast this time last year that Naomi Tutu reminded us of Dr. Martin Luther King's vision for the beloved community, remember? The year before that, Reverend Starsky Wilson posed the question to us, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to give up to get to that community that you want to see? So when we think about the beloved community, we have to understand first, it's a work in progress, and the journey toward that beloved community is never ending because we should constantly be doing the work, right? So what we're going to do, and I'm so excited about it, is take this journey toward inclusive excellence together. And sometimes that's scary when we're talking about what do we have to sacrifice to get there, because that means we have to look within. What role am I playing? What things do I have to let go in order to deal with who I am and what I'm thinking because of the way I've been socialized and the things that have created these biases that every single one of us in the room have. If you have a brain, you have a bias. And so we have to understand that and recognize that. But what's going to be exciting about this journey that I'm going to tell you about is that you don't have to do it alone. I am excited about the leadership that we have in place. So let me first start there, because I think when we think about what we have to do as individuals, it's always great. We can do it by ourselves, but it's a little bit easier when you have leadership in place that buys into that vision and wants to help you to succeed. So I set an appointment with our mayor, Brian Treese, and I wanted to just inform him of what we were talking about doing in the community and just make sure that he understood and see if he was on board with doing that. And Mayor Treese and I think you would agree that it turned into a full visioning session of where we see this community and what this could mean for us. And I was excited about that when you have leaders in place that even when they don't have all of the answers, they know to ask the right questions and they know to put the right people in place to get to that community that we need. So speaking of visions, the Inclusive Excellence Framework was introduced to our community by a gift to our community in the form of Dr. Kevin McDonald. Yes. So he's out there somewhere. But let me just say, he brought the Inclusive Excellence Framework to the university. He did a session where several business leaders were there, and I appreciate his willingness to take that Inclusive Excellence Framework adopted for higher education and transfer the language to the business community. So this journey is going to include helping our businesses speak the same language, understand how to incorporate a framework where it's not just about diversity, because we can talk about diversity, but we really have to get to inclusion where everyone feels that they have a voice. Everyone knows where they fit in this community and what role they have to play, right? So that Inclusive Excellence Framework is going to help us. So we have two legs of this journey toward inclusive excellence. So we'll have businesses that are working over the course of this year to adopt that framework to what they're already doing, but to create environments where they get employees that come in that look different, that are different, and we celebrate that. But not only that, we have created some place where they feel they fit. But then there's a team of individuals that started to work together, calling themselves the Matters of Social Justice team. And it started with initiative with Boone County. And Boone County brought in a speaker. We did some sessions. We started to put out the call to do some collaborative work together. So it's not just the town, it's not just the gown, it's all of us working together toward a common goal. So the Matters of Social Justice team said, hey, we can't just have our businesses doing this work, because we all know that it has to start with us, right? Remember I shared before, we have to understand what we have to work on as individuals. So why not create opportunities as an individual, for an individual to go through to understand how to mitigate those biases that we all have? So the Matters of Social Justice team was formed to create experiences. This year, we're going to create experience for each and every community member to participate in. Each and every community member to participate in. Experiences to help you understand our biases, not shy away from them, not think that if we don't address them, they just go away, because we can't create a beloved community in that way. We have to create an environment by which we understand it, we see it, we call it out by its name, and we work together to mitigate it. That's what this journey is going to do. So with any journey, you need a passport. So this passport is chock full of an understanding of what the journey toward inclusive excellence is, understand the framework introduced by Dr. Kevin McDonald. You have a little sheet on your tables that explains what it looks like from the business side, what it looks like for the individual side, and what steps you need to do in order to participate. You'll fill out that registration form on your tables. And at the end of the breakfast, you'll go out, if you're going out this door or even the side, and you'll turn that in to collect your passport, and then we'll start this journey together. So I'm excited. I encourage you to participate. We all have a place in this. So I want to make sure that I don't forget some things. We have a website. So you see right there our hashtag. We definitely want you to start hashtagging the inclusive journey as you're going through different experiences. On the half page, you'll see that we have the website, inclusivejourney.org. You also can connect with us on Facebook, so if you could, your phone should be off, however, like the Inclusive Journey page on Facebook, and learn more about how you can be involved, because this has the opportunity, Boone County, this has the opportunity to be transformative for our community. Not too long ago, we were in national headlines for all the wrong reasons. We have an opportunity to change that around. Look at what we're doing now together with the help of great leadership, great visionaries. Let's take this journey toward inclusive excellence. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Now I would like to invite to the stage Columbia City Manager Mike Mathis to give a presentation on poverty in Columbia.
Good morning. I have the honor to be here this morning to be your city manager and to speak at the diversity breakfast. It's not very often the city manager takes that privilege, but I have some great news to share with you today. Some great news, some not so great news, and three things I want to ask your help on. So we've got a brief presentation. I promise it won't take more than 10 minutes, and you can hold me to that. And I want to ask you to go on a journey with me for about those 10 minutes and walk through some things that are hard to talk about for some folks. Some folks would like to stop talking about it. And as would I. If we can make some more progress, we probably could. So let's start the PowerPoint. I want to show you some information that we've collected that's pretty exciting. There we are. Thanks. Some of you have heard me talk about this quote before, and I promise there's new information here, so it should be interesting. This quote by Nelson Mandela is all about how poverty is man-made, just like slavery and apartheid. And the good news about that is we can change it. If we made it, we can improve on that. We can change the state of poverty. I didn't believe that at first. I was a hard sell when I first heard this quote. But I will tell you the city's journey and my personal journey, I now know for a fact this is true. And I could prove it. The bar that you see that's circled, this was the thing that sparked the city government to wake up to poverty. About 4 years ago, we collected every bit of data we could get our hands on. It was over 150 metrics about Columbia. We put it on a table, and what leapt out was this gap, this unexplainable gap between white and black unemployment rates in Columbia. It shocked us so much, it spurred us to action. We finally, if you're a nonprofit like United Way or Job Point or CMCA, we finally joined the fight against poverty because of this statistic. But look where we've come. That's what started us to act. We joined the fight. We woke up and we joined the fight. It's been dropping ever since. We have now reached, for the first time, that we can find single-digit unemployment for African Americans in Columbia. That's a huge thing. Some people refer to this as economic justice. I just know we all win. Look what happens to everybody's unemployment, right? We solve our worst problem, everybody wins. We'll move on briefly. The war's not over, poverty's still with us. And what we've realized is while we are getting the right people, more people jobs, minimum wage is still not cutting it. It's still, you cannot get out of poverty working full time on minimum wage. I want to spend a little bit of time on this. Ferguson is something that haunts our state. And these pictures come from a movement that happened after the events of Ferguson. Young black Americans all over the country felt that Michael Brown did not get a very fair shake from the press. And there was a movement with a hashtag that said, which picture would they use of me? Which picture would they use? And it was this feeling like they always used the thuggish picture of Michael Brown and not the picture of him graduating from high school or all of the other good things he did in his life, volunteering, etc. So this movement was young African American putting pictures online of what they looked like on the weekend and what they looked like during the week. And it's a key thing for me. Look at this. I'm going to be very honest with you. As a white man, these make me a little uncomfortable, right? In the upper left, he's flashing the gang sign. The guy in the middle looks like he's going to rob a bank, right? The upper right, I'm not sure which gender he or she is. I'm befuddled, right? Lower left, why is he so angry? And the lower right, that's totally inappropriate dress in a professional environment if you're looking for a job. So that's my culture, that's my bias Nikki was talking about. If we could show what these folks look like during the week, here's what they do for a living. Now, I'm not so uncomfortable anymore. We got armed services. The funny thing about the guy that looked like he was going to rob a bank, he is a banker. We got an anesthesiologist, a teacher, and I love me some firefighters. How about that? Now, what's the difference between the first picture and this one? There's only one, it's the same people. A job is the only difference. A job is the only difference. So what am I asking you to do? Here's the first of three things. If you're in a position to make decisions about who you hire, I'm asking you to hire local. Hire African Americans from Columbia. If you want to help us close this gap and to change life here, make our corner of the world a better place, achieve the beloved community, you have to do this on purpose with intentionality. Hire these folks. Now, it might seem like we need a lot of jobs to move this number, but it's not a lot of jobs. In fact, we've created enough jobs in the last year to close the gap. It's just who's getting those jobs, right? So you can help me by making that choice and hiring the right people. Hire local, hire our folks. Now, most of us in the room aren't in that position to make that decision, and so there's something else you can do. I don't know if you've heard of the CARE program, but it's an amazing program. It's operated by the Parks Department. Ron Schmidt is here. Marianne McCullum and Ray, I think, started this, if I remember right. It's an idea that we can give experience to young kids, mostly, so that their resume is built. We teach people how to be successful in the workplace. So the city provides job coaches that, I know I didn't know this at 14 when I started working. You have to be on time. That matters to your employer. It's best to have a bath, too, right? These are fundamentals. I'm talking about me now. That I would, if only I had had a job coach. So we do that for our folks, our student trainers, and they're free to the employer. So we provide this employee to businesses all across Columbia in every industry for free. We pay the salary. But here's our problem. The yellow line is how many 16, 17, 18-year-olds apply to participate. The blue line is how many we can afford to have in the program. So we run out of money before we're even halfway to meeting the demand for the program. Now, why am I talking about this? It only costs $1,500 to sponsor a student through the summer in this program. $1,500. So you might consider doing that. You might consider sponsoring a student, a trainee. Ron Schmidt's here, by the way. He can take your check. Now, some people ask, well, if I'm going to invest in this, I don't want to spend my money on something that's not proven, that doesn't work. I need to make sure it works. That's a fair question, one you should ask. How about a 99% success rate? I wish everything I invested in had this kind of return. That's amazing. The CARE program works. Well, there's a third thing you can do. I'm very proud of this work as well. About 5 years ago, we thought, well, we need to support our own local businesses. Not only hire local, but shop local. Shop at Black-owned business, women-owned business, LGBTQ business. And what we realized is we didn't know where are they? What are those businesses? We don't have a list. So we made one. Anthony Stanton and Tyree Bynum started the list. Is Anthony here, by the way? But personal thank you for starting this work. And then, see, one thing you probably know is you can't see a thing up here. And then Jim Witt, of course. My deep thanks to Jim Witt for polishing the list and for getting it online. He's helping the city as well as serving on the school board, of course. And now, thank you, Jim. You can just go to our website. Next time you need to fix your sidewalk or put a roof on the house, or if you're really brave and you're willing to let someone else give you a haircut, you can try a new business. You can invest in our communities, anyone that's disadvantaged in the business enterprise. And it's hard enough to be successful in business as a white man. It's not an easy thing. 70% of startups fail. But it's even harder for everybody else, and when we're honest, we can admit that. That's why I love working for the city government. We get to be totally honest. We don't have a dogma we have to serve. We can follow the evidence where it takes us. And that's what's different about the city. We're not a political party. We don't have a platform we have to slavishly obey in spite of the facts. We get to follow the facts and act on the evidence we've seen. And so what I'm so proud about and what gives me so much hope is we are making a difference together. And I want to thank all of our partners that have been in this fight from the beginning, United Way especially, the schools, Job Point, CMCA, many, many others. I could go on with everyone in the room. But take a minute when you can and look around this room at each other. You obviously are in this fight or you wouldn't be here this morning. And so when I ask you to help me cross this finish line, I know you're already doing it. And if we can keep energized about it, we can make those bar charts even. And that's really the goal, to have this equal and beloved community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On your table, you will find a compilation of writings by students of the 4th through 12th grades from schools throughout Columbia. McDonald's Restaurants of Columbia has again generously sponsored the Student Writings Program. The booklet was printed by Missouri Employers Mutual. To highlight the program and the young voices of Columbia, we would like to present a video produced by Columbia's City Channel featuring a selection of students whose writings are in the booklet.
Five-star world. Today, our world is divided. Today, I would only rate our world 2 out of 5 stars. We are broken and set against each other. Reach out, be strong, come together, unite as one. We can now hold hands and realize that, despite our differences, we are all the same, all equal people. If everyone saw that and acted on it, yes, I would rate that a 5-star world. It will be a journey, one with many steps. So start today. We are unstoppable together. The path to a 5-star world, it starts with you.
Back in kindergarten, I walked into the school and I would see so many flags on the walls. Back then, all I would do was marvel at all of the different colors of the flags. Now, I realize that those flags weren't there just to look good. Each flag represents a part of our diverse culture today. It wasn't just in kindergarten that I would marvel at all the colors. I would do that all the way till 2nd grade. When I was in 3rd grade, I appreciated those flags so much more. I realized how lucky we are to see so many flags on the walls. It shows that we are a community which accepts all people. No matter where they are from or what their background is, they will always be welcome. Annually, we have a multicultural assembly at my school, Jefferson Middle School, which gives everybody who has an origin outside of the United States a chance to show their pride for the country that they are from. People who have an origin inside of the United States can participate too. It shows that all people will be treated equally, and they should have pride in holding their flag. Coming from an Indian origin myself, I got to hold the flag for India. Everybody cheered for every country as loud as I could, and that was a moment when I noticed something. In several countries, people don't have this freedom. Our city, Columbia, has diversity as one of its key values, and I feel very glad about that. Another instance where I've encountered diversity is at my tennis academy. I met a boy who was from Haiti, and he was very social. We talked about our lives and our pasts. He described to me the ordeal that he had to go through before the massive earthquake hit Haiti. Despite talking about it, he was still smiling. I was wondering what made him and his family choose Colombia of all the different places. Then I realized, why not Colombia? Colombia's population is very diverse, and we welcome everybody, no matter where they came from and what their background is. In conclusion, Colombia is a very diverse and heartwarming community. Being the son of 2 immigrants, I realized how comforting this community is. I never felt out of place. Now, as a longtime citizen of Colombia, it is my duty to provide the newcomers with comfort. At school, I no longer look at the flags as mere cloth with colors on them. I see the deeper meaning.
Dire diversity. United we stand, broken we fall and rise again. Embraced and loved we flourish, and encourage others to do the same. We are connected by a red string of fate. If only Cupid's arrow would wound our hate. May we cast down our blinders and declare to the heavens all tongues as one universal song, celebrating the diversity that brings us together and sets us apart. Walls would fall, stars would shoot, rain would bow, and no one would need to part from anyone ever again. We are all a part of each other. When you pass a stranger, you are in danger of leaving someone amazing behind. When you scorn a race in cloudy haste, you are making a sad mistake. If you love your neighbor and die one day later, you will never regret a day of your life. The world is a cookie. All ingredients chip in and make it what it is. Don't put us in a box. Bring us to your lips. Hear our different voices, our agonies and bliss. Separate, we are plain, bland and often bitter, repelling each other as oil and water do, and sometimes butter too. But if we come together, similarities and differences alike, clinging to each other, I believe that we would find we were meant to be a team, a family, a delectable cookie with individual personalities all baked inside.
One of the reasons why Columbia is often recognized as one of the nation's best cities is because we have leadership that recognizes and promotes diversity and inclusion. For this, the presentation of the 21st Annual Columbia Values Diversity Awards, we are honored to have our mayor, Brian Treese.
Thank you, Monica. And good morning. It is indeed my honor to serve as mayor of this beloved community. I want to welcome you to the now 25th annual Diversity Breakfast. And as I was thinking about this morning's events and contemplating the Martin Luther King holiday on Monday, I remembered a quote that you may have heard recently from the state of Alabama. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And of course, Martin Luther King spoke those words in 1964 at a commencement ceremony at Wesleyan, and as I was looking at the context for his remarks, the origin of that quote actually dates back to a Unitarian minister and abolitionist Theodore Parker in 1853. So when you think about that quote in the context of a pre-Civil War nation, indeed, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And here in Columbia, I doubt that we are unique, but probably more profound than other communities, that the city council can be simultaneously criticized for moving too fast on an issue without enough public input, and the cruel irony of not moving fast enough. And indeed, on issues like social equity and social justice and economic justice and community policing, indeed, in the words of Theodore Parker and Martin Luther King Jr., the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. When all of us ever really want is, in the words of Elvis Presley, a little less talk and a little more action. As I was thinking about and listening to Nikki Magruder's comments, she mentioned Reverend Starsky Wilson. And it was 2 years ago at this event that I was just a candidate sitting out at the table with you. And I think for a lot of us, this breakfast is something that we do once a year. And then at 9 o'clock, we go back to our regular day. And tomorrow becomes a little even more regular. And pretty soon, before you know it, the year is up. And we're back here at the annual diversity breakfast. And so thanks to Nikki Magruder, who failed to mention while she was talking about Naomi Tutu and Reverend Starsky Wilson, that she was actually the 2016 Diversity Award winner. And she has now plotted a path for us to take, as my friend Marlena Freimeyer mentioned in her essay, to take those many steps that we all need to take to reach that long arc towards justice. Reverend Starsky Wilson laid out a path for me. And a lot of us use the terms diversity and inclusion interchangeably, like they both mean the same. But he actually talked about, if you remember his remarks from 2015, that we can't get to diversity without opportunity. And there has to be that opportunity before you're ever knocking on the door to be in the room, to have a diverse community. But it's not enough just to be in the room, you have to be at the table. And with that opportunity comes diversity, and with diversity comes that inclusion. Because when you're outside the room, the conversation is about you. And when you're inside the room, the conversation is with you. And that's a big difference. And it's only when that conversation is with you can we achieve the equity that we all want, that your opinion is valued as much as everybody else that's sitting at that table. And only with that equity can we reach the outcomes that we all want. And with those outcomes comes that reconciliation towards justice. And that's why I think the awards that we present at this annual breakfast go a long way to recognize those people that take those many steps throughout the year, and not just at 1 year, but that continuous journey along that arc of the moral universe as it bends towards justice. And as in the past, each year the City of Columbia recognizes those individuals and organizations whose work in the community exemplifies the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And this year's nominees are listed in your program, as well as the award winners from previous years. A panel of judges selected by the Planning Committee is charged with choosing the Columbia Values Diversity Award winners. And this year, our judges were Stephanie Brown, Shadanita Horton, Stephanie Browning, and Dr. Clyde Ruffin. Their decisions are based on the criteria of promoting an appreciation for diversity and cultural understanding in our community, community work which exemplifies the teachings of Dr. King in fostering individual dignity and racial equality and understanding and peacemaking and solving problems through nonviolence. And lastly, engagement in this activity for an extended period of time, with significant activity in Columbia in the preceding year. You know, as mayor, I come across people every day that we should be so proud as a beloved community to have people who work for an equal opportunity for all. And choosing from that list of nominees and those that were not even nominated is a difficult job. So it's with great pleasure that I now present the 2018 Columbia Values Diversity Awards, beginning with the Group Award. Will the representatives of Veterans United Home Loans please come forward? Of course, we all know Veterans United. They're an organization that has had a great impact on Columbia and has worked hard to promote diversity and cultural understanding, not only within their organization, but the entire community. And Veterans United empowers its employees to be active volunteers in Columbia and encourages them to learn more about diversity and inequality and how life experiences are different for all. And they've created a system called VU Matchmaker that informs their employees of opportunities to serve in the community. Those employees learn how to participate in either one-time projects or ongoing volunteer opportunities and how to represent Veterans United on not-for-profit boards. And when you look around the city of Columbia, whether it's a not-for-profit or on a city board and commission, their employees are active participants, not only with their foundation's dollars in our community, but their employees' time and talent within our community. As you all know, they sponsor a number of community-wide events on social justice. They support local organizations that educate and promote diversity, like the Sharp End Project and the Diversity Awareness Partnership. And of course, they've given financial support to Big Brothers and Big Sisters and the Fun City Youth Academy and Granny's House and Great Circle and Room at the Inn and True North and Turning Point, all of which directly work to support Columbia's diverse populations. I had an opportunity last summer to preside on the unveiling of a new plaque on Providence Road. Perhaps you've seen it. It was the fourth installment, I believe, of a plaque commemorating a stop on Columbia's African American Heritage Trail. And when we think about that long arc of the moral universe, drive down Providence Road sometime. As you go north from Stadium, you'll notice about Rollins Avenue to Turner, it turns profoundly. And if you look at the original plat map of Providence Road, and as a former chair of the Historic Preservation Commission, Providence, of course, is named as the road that delivered you from a village named Providence to Columbia. And as that road was aligning with I-70, the natural path would have been to go down 4th Avenue. But that was populated with Victorian homes and large Queen Anne mansions that would have been very expensive to acquire. But if you bent that road a little bit, you went through Cemetery Hill. You went through the Sharp End. You went through a number of African American owned businesses. And with that intent of the Planning Commission, we bent that road to take the path that was cheaper, but in so doing wiped out an entire generation of African American owned businesses. With the help of Veterans United interpreting that history for us and that often difficult conversation that our community has to have at times, those businesses are now remembered right there, and through the great work of State Representative Kip Kendrick, we've renamed a section of that Providence Road, the Sherman Brown Memorial Highway. A black business owner that was born in a house with 10 siblings on that section of road. And so when you talk about a metaphor for that long arc of the moral universe, it does bend towards justice. Veterans United's support of that multicultural education and its active role in social justice is certainly in the tradition of Dr. Martin Luther King, who advocated for institutions to be activists and stated that critical thinking is the true goal of education. Please join me in recognizing and thanking Veterans United Home Loans. This year, we have 2 co-winners of the individual award. Would Brian Jones and Stacy Smith please come forward? Well, Brian and Stacy are both employees of Shelter Insurance. They're a local company that values diversity and inclusion. And I want to start with Mr. Jones for a minute. In 2015, Mr. Jones was hired as Shelter's first manager of diversity and inclusion to oversee their implementation of this journey, of that company's new diversity and inclusion strategy, and to create new trainings and recruitment plans. You know, Shelter is one of those companies that empowers its employees to be active in the community. And Mr. Jones serves on the board of Diversity Awareness Partnership. He's a member of the city's Commission on Human Rights, and he's a key member of the Shelter Insurance Success Grant Committee. I think those applications for scholarships are still open, and if you haven't participated or looked at that program, you need to look at it. It creates opportunities for lots of kids in our community. Mrs. Smith is the Director of Human Resources at Shelter Insurance and was instrumental in the creation of the company's focused approach to diversity and inclusion initiatives. Ms. Smith has long been a community champion for diversity and inclusion. She also serves on the Diversity Awareness Partnership Advisory Council, the city's Commission on Human Rights, the Columbia African American Association Memorial Scholarship Fund, the Board of Directors for Meals on Wheels, the Board of Directors for Boys and Girls Club, just to name a few. I could probably go on. But I also want to make a comment about Shelter Insurance. Not only are they a great corporate citizen, we are proud to have them in our community. You know, they're a mutual insurance company. And if you know the whole premise behind mutual insurance, it's that those shared risks and burdens are often too great to be borne by ourselves. But when we bond together, we're stronger and better together. And that's the whole premise of a mutual insurance company. They could put their premiums anywhere, but they choose to invest their premiums in our community and in their people. And by empowering their employees to be active participants in our communities, and we are all the beneficiaries of that. Both Brian and Stacy are active members of several nonprofit and public bodies that seek to foster that multicultural understanding that eliminates discrimination and alleviates the effects of inequality in Columbia. They're trained diversity and inclusion facilitators out of the NCCJ program and have been a powerful team to lead initiatives not only through Shelter Insurance, but also throughout our entire beloved community. Would you please join me in recognizing Brian Jones and Stacy Smith? And let us all remember as we leave here today to pick up our passports and continue that journey until next year when we come back with our full passports and challenging ourselves and remember those key takeaways that we have on this journey towards inclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Treese. And congratulations to the winners of this year's awards. Now, under the direction of Jazz Rucker, may I present Battle Vocal Arts as they bring their musical talents to our celebration. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker Kevin Powell. Kevin is one of the most acclaimed political, cultural, literary, and hip-hop voices in America today. Kevin is a native of Jersey City, raised by a single mother in extreme poverty, but managed to study at Rutgers University, thanks to New Jersey's Educational Opportunity Fund. Kevin has gone on to be the author of 13 books, including his newest title, The Education of Kevin Powell, A Boy's Journey into Manhood. Kevin's writings have also appeared in CNN.com, Esquire, Ebony, The Huffington Post, The Washington Post, Rolling Stone, The Guardian, ESPN.com, and Vibe. As a pop culture curator, Kevin produced the first exhibit on the history of hip-hop in America at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio. As a humanitarian, Kevin's work includes local, national, and international initiatives to end violence against women and girls. And he has done extensive philanthropic and relief work ranging from Hurricane Katrina to earthquakes in Haiti and Japan, to Superstorm Sandy in New York, to his annual holiday party and clothing drive for the homeless every December. Kevin is the host of a new podcast exclusively on Apple Podcasts called One-on-One with Kevin Powell, and folks can listen for free. The first episode is men talking about the hashtag #MeToo movement, and the second one, coming this weekend, will be on Dr. King. Finally, Kevin is a co-founder of BK Nation, a new American organization focused on civil and human rights for all. It is our pleasure to welcome to our celebration Kevin Powell.
I can't see anyone. Good morning. Good morning. God is incredible. I'm a Christian, but I'm never so religiously arrogant to assume everyone is Christian. So if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, if you're Buddhist, if you're agnostic, if you're atheist, whatever you claim or don't claim, you have that right because we all are a part of the human family. Am I right, you all? I just hope spiritually we can agree, not religiously, spiritually, the soul's connected, that we're all sisters, brothers, persons, people, a part of this human family. Amen? I want to thank, I'm not sure if the mayor is still here, but thank you, Mr. Mayor, if he's still here, and the city officials that are here. I want to thank the City of Columbia, the Diversity Celebration Planning Committee. This is a beautiful event. I'm so happy to be here. This is the first event that I'm doing this year. I literally got off a plane from my honeymoon on Monday, and here I am in Missouri on Thursday. And I was happy it was 57 degrees yesterday. I want to acknowledge Ms. Dresser, the event producer, one of the event producers. I just want to give her acknowledgement. I think it's important to acknowledge her. And Ms. Naylor, thank you so much, because it's important to acknowledge the folks who are doing the groundwork here. So can we give them a round of applause as well? Thank you. Thank you so much. I certainly want to acknowledge all the leaders in the room today, all the leaders, and I do believe that all people are leaders. I want to acknowledge all the folks that are leaders. I actually wish that we can go get the choir, the group of young people, and bring them back in here because they represent the diversity and inclusion we've been talking about all morning. Am I right? Most importantly, I want to acknowledge the community that's here. I know the event we're running a little bit after, but I'm going to make this as brief as possible. As Shakespeare said, brevity is the soul of wit. But I did not fly all the way from New York City to only talk for 2 minutes. But please be patient with me. I'm going to do this as quickly as possible, and then I'm going to sign some books out there and hopefully can talk with and meet as many of you as possible. But there's a few things that I want to talk about, because I love this theme, forward in unity, embracing our beloved community. I would not be standing here. I would not be standing here. I would not be standing here if it wasn't for the civil rights movement and the work of people like Dr. King and Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer and Malcolm X and so many people whose names we'll never know. I'm so clear I would not be standing here. You know, when the city manager spoke so powerfully with action steps, can y'all say action steps? About ways to address inequality. It made me think about my studies, sir, going back to the 50s and 60s, the civil rights era, how there were people, black people and white people and all kinds of people coming together as he was charging us to make sure, even though Kevin Powell, who was born in the 60s, but I have no memory of the 60s, I was born in the late 1960s, I have no memory of it, but my mother has an 8th grade education. She was born into poverty in the Jim Crow South, South Carolina, in the 1940s. She and her 3 sisters and brother and father and mother lived in a 2-room shack in South Carolina. They were so poor that sometimes the only meal they had was to pour some syrup into a bowl and pass it around. They were so poor, the 4 girls had 1 dress, and they would sometimes take turns going to school because it was just 1 dress for the girls. They were so poor that by the time my mother was 8 years old, she could not imagine anything other than being the help for other people. The first job she had at 8 years old was picking cotton in the fields of South Carolina. I come from generations of poverty. I come from generations of trauma. I come from generations of pain. I come from generations of systemic oppression, discrimination, racism that literally felt like our birthright. Are y'all out there with me? And so when I say I do not take for granted, and I'm humbled and honored to do these events. I'm here in Missouri today. I'll be in Texas and Virginia, back in Missouri, on the other side of the state, Kansas City next week. I don't take for granted that my grandmother could not read or write, and I've published 13 books. I do not take for granted that not only am I writing for my late grandmother, but also my mother and all the people who come from where I come from who have never had an opportunity to think their voices matter. That's where I come from. I know when I think about forward in unity, embracing our beloved community, that lives like mine represent what's possible. Represent what's possible. People always ask me, well, Kevin, how can why do you do the work that you do? Why are you an activist? I said, man, because I love people. I love all people. I don't care who you are, I love all people. I love people. And people give me hope even where I don't agree with everything that's coming out of their mouths. Just earlier this week, I had a conversation with an older white sister, a senior citizen, a baby boomer, the generation ahead of me. Generation X is in the building, y'all. She, Irish American, some Native American blood. I'm African American. She said some things about racism and about skin privilege in this country where it said to me what I say all the time: if you call yourself an American, you have a historical and cultural and moral and spiritual responsibility to have a working knowledge about America. We cannot continue to throw out words like diversity and inclusion if that diversity does not include the education that you have. And also, there's nothing wrong with being ignorant. There's something wrong with being ignorant and not doing something about it. She made a comparison between African American trauma and history in America and Irish American trauma and history in America. I've been to Ireland. She hasn't been. I said, you need to go to Ireland. I've been to Africa. You got to go where your people come from. We all need to know who we are no matter where we come from, right? But she felt compelled to say to me, we've had it much worse. She minimized slavery and began to compare Irish American history in America to Black American history out of ignorance. And I just thank God that I practice yoga and go to therapy, and been going to therapy for over 2 decades, and go to church. You know, namaste. And I took a step back because, she felt my quietness. Because I realized years ago, I'd have cursed her out. Like, how dare you? You do not even know what African American people have been through in this country's history. But I realized, wait a minute, she was educated in America. And whether you went to public schools or private schools, some of us paid to be miseducated, y'all. We can never get to unity and the beloved community if our education is not inclusive of all people equally. For example, I'm a writer. I've known I wanted to be a writer since I was a little boy. When I was 8 years old, my mama took me to the library. Even though she only had an 8th grade education, my mother, who was born in 1943, August 28th, she turned 20 on the day that Dr. King gave the March on Washington, gave the I Have a Dream speech at the March on Washington. Someone said they were there. Wow. My mother did not march. She did not sit in. She was not a freedom rider, any of those things, but she caught the spirit of that movement, which said, just because I didn't get an opportunity to get an opportunity, I now have this son who I'm raising on welfare and food stamps and government cheese, not because I'm a cheat, not because I'm lazy, but because I've inherited generations of poverty. And I've got to figure out to make sure how a way for this son of mine, this black boy, does not suffer what I've suffered through. Y'all with me out there?
Yeah.
And so when the white sister, the eldest sister, and I do believe we're sisters and brothers, said what she said, I said, you know what? I'm going to have a conversation with her. I will. Trust me on that. But in that moment, I said, you know what? She doesn't know that when I was a little boy growing up, I didn't know about the Civil Rights Movement because they didn't teach it in school. All we learned was Rosa Parks didn't give up her seat. Dr. King had a dream. No one ever played the whole speech for us, and we never read the whole speech, K through 12. And then Dr. King was dead. We didn't learn anything else. Most of the time, our history classes or social studies classes ended after World War II. That was it. And we wonder why there's such a gap in information in our country. Well, it needs to start with the school system. It needs to start with our religious institutions. It needs to start with our local leadership. It needs to start with our businesses. It's across the board. There's no way I can look at the statistics that the city manager put up there for us very clearly and not look at it and say, even though I'm not from Columbia, Missouri, I've actually been to all 50 states in this country, all the major cities, medium-sized cities. I've been to Columbia before. Everywhere I go, it's the same exact conversation. I've been on a lecture circuit since the early 1990s. There's something profoundly wrong with that. Now, I will say this, and I've got to give love to Columbia, Missouri. Never have I been at a Dr. King program in the 20-plus years that I've been participating in these kind of programs where someone or someone's laid out so strategically, and so simply as was done this morning, here is what y'all can do. So I say thank you. Thank you. Imagine if we could multiply Columbia, Missouri times the rest of the country. Then black boys growing up poor like me, who discovered my love of reading as an 8-year-old boy in the library, reading sports books, learning about baseball. That's one reason I love the history of the St. Louis Cardinals, for example. Learning about all sports. And then when I was 11 years old, stumbling into a writer named Ernest Hemingway, For Whom the Bell Tolls, and that transformed my life. I was like, man, this book is incredible. I read as much of it as I could understand. I went back to the library, and y'all are too young to remember this, but back in the day, they had something called encyclopedias, right? And I looked up Hemingway, and I said, my gosh, if this is what a writer does, then I want to be a writer. But guess what, y'all? I was an A student K through 12 because my mother did not tolerate bad grades from the time I was a little boy because of Dr. King and Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer and the Civil Rights Movement. She said to me, you're going to college, you're going to college, you're going to college, but there's something wrong with an education. If we're talking about diversity and inclusion, that K through 12, I did not know that black writers or Latino writers or Asian writers or Native American writers or Middle Eastern writers or women writers or queer writers even existed. Did not know. Why does that matter? Because how are we going to talk about diversity and inclusion if people don't even see themselves in the history, on TV, in film, on a regular basis? In a couple weeks, I have a cover story coming out in British GQ magazine. There's a movie coming out in February called Black Panther. For those who don't know, Marvel Comics in the 1960s, inspired by the Civil Rights Movement and the work of Dr. King, decided to create the first black superhero called Black Panther in 1966. Well, guess what? 1966 also happened to be the year that the Black Panther Party was created. Wow. Coincidence, right? The comic was created in July of 66, the organization in fall of 66. Well, where did the Black Panther term come from? In places like Alabama, in the South, as they were registering black folks to vote, they actually had a local Black Panther Party organization. But if we don't read, we don't study, we don't know anything about American history, this is all foreign to us. Why is this important? The interview that I'm doing for British GQ magazine is with Michael B. Jordan, one of the stars. Michael B. Jordan, who played in Creed, the Sylvester Stallone franchise, Rocky, and also Fruitvale Station, which you also see. Michael B. Jordan said, man, it took all these years for us to even see black folks as superheroes. Why is this important? Because we can't talk about unity, beloved community, without talking about where we are in America today. I'm looking at this audience. Half of the audience, at least, identify as women. Half the population of this country, at least, are women. Half the population of this world, at least, are women. We can't just talk about racism, and we should. Oh, yeah. But we also have to talk about something called sexism, patriarchy, misogyny. And I happen to be friends with a woman named Tarana Burke, who, like me, lives in New York City, and 10 years ago, she created a hashtag called #MeToo. I happen to be friends with an actress, Italian-American actress named Annabella Sciorra, who's one of the many women who talked about how she was raped by Harvey Weinstein. I happen to be a mentee of women with names like Eve Ensler and Bell Hooks. I happen to be the son of the first feminist, the first teacher and leader I ever met, my mother. What I'm getting at is that we can't continue to talk about diversity and inclusion, and then you see examples over and over again. It's not just these women in Hollywood. It's not just women who are famous. It's not just women who work in corporate America or the media. My mother. Women who have been the help, who work in fast food restaurants, who work all over our communities. Women who go to your churches, your synagogues, your masjids. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Women who put these programs together, women who serve the food here today. Pretty much every woman that I've ever met in my life, including my wife, has been sexually harassed or violated in some way by men. By men. Because just like racism, it's about power. Who has it and who does not have it? Who wants to keep it no matter what? And who doesn't want others to have it who might be different than them? Are y'all with me out there? We should be ashamed of ourselves that 1 out of 4 women in this country or in this room, 1 out of 3 on the planet could say they were the victims at some point in their lives of some form of sexual violence at the hands of men. I don't know how we can talk about Dr. King given how much Me Too and Time's Up has exploded. How can you talk about diversity and inclusion and not talk about unequal pay for women doing the same work as men all these years? How can we talk about diversity and inclusion when women, no matter where they are in the country, have to brace themselves if in certain spaces, and we men who have been socialized to believe that manhood is nothing more than power and ego and senseless competition and violence and violence and violence, where we've been socialized to believe through our education on all levels that women are nothing more than sexual objects or mother figures. You do not get to a beloved community if you hate and disrespect and denigrate and disempower half the world's population. It took me a long time as a man, as a heterosexual man, to understand that, but I was challenged when I was in my 20s, half my life ago, by women. If we are serious about diversity and inclusion, someone said it up here, we have got to be willing to have all these uncomfortable conversations. Racism, back to racism for a second, I love all people. I don't think, how do I say this? Just say it, right? The news this morning, Professor Ted Thornhill, Florida Gulf Coast University in Florida, now has to have a police presence at his classroom because he's teaching a class, this is online, y'all, called, quote unquote, white racism. He has police because people had threatened him. He's gotten 46 pages of hate emails. Now, white racism doesn't mean that we believe that all white people are racist. No. What it means is, hey, y'all, we need to examine this system that's in place, Missouri, which is a Native American word, which means the Native Americans were here first, right? You know, just basic American History 101, what Dr. King was talking about. If you listen to the I Have a Dream speech, the beginning of it, he gives us a history lesson. When he talks about Abraham Lincoln and 100 years ago, he's referencing the Emancipation Proclamation. Am I right, y'all? You know, this is what Dr. King did. We are learning from Dr. King here. Know your history. He's teaching a class saying, hey, we have to address this issue of racism because if we don't address it, every few years it explodes in the way that we sing now. I mean, next Monday, I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia on the Dr. King holiday. You can imagine what's going through my mind as a black person, a black man, given what happened in Charlottesville last year, given the racism and the anti-Semitism. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We've got to be willing to have these conversations. Racism is race plus power. Who has it and who does not have it? Who controls the images? When the city manager put up those images and was honest and said, I, as a white man, you know, have been socialized by this system to see these people a certain kind of way, well, I'm here to tell you, I've been stopped by the police with a suit on and a hoodie on. It doesn't matter. Because people have been socialized to see people a certain kind of way. We see people of color a certain kind of way. Black folks, immigrant folks. We see women a certain kind of way. How we've been socialized. We see poor people. I'm so glad we mentioned the word poverty here. I can't tell you how many Dr. King programs I've been at where they didn't even want to talk about poverty. Meanwhile, Dr. King in April of '67, the year before he was killed, gave a speech on Vietnam where he came out against the Vietnam War. And he said in that speech, which we should read in its entirety, we're sending poor blacks and poor whites to fight poor yellow people, Asian people, in a place called Vietnam. Dr. King, who came from the upper middle class of Atlanta, Georgia, born on January 15th, 1929, father and grandfather of preachers. By 15, he was a college student at Morehouse College, the historically black college for men in Atlanta, Georgia. By 26, he had his PhD. At 34, he was a Nobel Peace Prize winner, best-selling author, a historical figure. When you put Nelson Mandela up there on the screen, guess who he was inspiring? Dr. King. People like Mandela, who was in jail most of the 60s in South Africa. Guess who Dr. King was inspiring? A couple years ago, I was in Wales, in the United Kingdom. And you know what the Welsh said to me? We speak Welsh in our country, and we hold on to our identity because we paid attention to what was happening in America in the 60s around civil rights. It affected us. And I'm saying to you all, as sisters and brothers, we got to recognize the power that we have. It can either be for good or it could be for destruction. Classism. Dr. King organized a poor people's campaign at the end of his life because he said, what does it matter that you can sit anywhere in a bus if you have no money to get on the bus? What does it matter that you can sit at the lunch counter now if you have no money to buy a sandwich? In Memphis, Tennessee, where he gave his last speech on April 3rd, 1968, he was there, he interrupted his vacation because he was helping sanitation workers, what we call garbage men. This man with a PhD. He never thought he was separate of the people. So if we're talking about diversity and inclusion and unity and beloved community from this day forward, my challenge, my action step to you all, never again refer to people as illegal aliens. Never again refer to people as poor white trash, trailer trash, rednecks. Never again refer to people as ghetto or hood. Never again come to a event like this and not speak to the workers in the hotel. Never again come to an event like this and not say thank you to the people who are serving the food. You know? Because as Dr. King said, there's dignity in all work. Yeah, there is. But we don't stop with classism. We want to get to that beloved community. I mean, my gosh, there's hatred of immigrants. There's hatred of immigrants. And this is why a knowledge of American history is important. I said to that Irish American sister, oh yeah, you better believe, I know there was a time when Italian Americans and Irish Americans, Jewish sisters and brothers, Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans, should we go on down the list, y'all? Every generation, now it's Latinos, Muslims, Middle Eastern folks, Arab folks. We scapegoat people. I actually do take offense to people saying, well, this nation was built by immigrants. That's only half the truth. Actually, this nation was built by Native Americans were here first. This was land, that was their land. And then if you really know anything about the economic infrastructure of this country and this part of the world, the first global economy was called slavery. It was built by free labor. So it becomes a convenient way to leave out slavery when we say things like, well, it was built by immigrants. No, it was only partially built by immigrants. We need to get that right, y'all. Classism, anti-immigrationism, beloved community, and I'm glad someone said it, and I see the flag up there. You cannot be homophobic and transphobic in 2018, and you're talking about you want to have diversity and inclusion. You know, let's bring it back to Dr. King. And this is all documented. The March on Washington would not have happened if it wasn't for a gay black man named Bayard Rustin, who was the principal organizer on the March on Washington, where Dr. King was able to give that I Have a Dream speech. And so when we hate gay men, lesbians, bisexual folks, transgender folks, queer folks, when we find in the news earlier this week that the founder of Miss Trans America beauty pageant was killed, just because she was transgender, I'm saying to myself, how are we going to talk about love and Dr. King, but we're selective with that love? Either you love all people or you do not. Either you believe in justice and equality for all people or you do not. I was so happy when I saw a sister in a wheelchair being wheeled up to perform as part of the group. Many of us don't even recognize the disabled community, like they don't even exist. That has to be part of the conversation. If you're talking about diversity and inclusion, is this space also open to people who are quote unquote disabled? Are y'all with me out there? Is this space open to people of all religious faiths or no faith at all? You know? And when I see people, and I'm a Christian, I'm gonna say it again, but like I now believe, and I can say this as a older man, I'm so clear I don't believe in the same God some other folks believe in, because the God I believe in is about everybody. You know what I mean? The God I believe in is about love. Like Dr. King was about love. The God I believe in is not about hate. It's not about violence. It's not about telling women what they can do with their bodies. It's not about telling people who they can and cannot marry. No. The God I believe in is you have a right to exist on this planet, no matter who you are. And you have a right to opportunities. And what I believe in, where I think Dr. King was going in his short life, and I'm going to end it here, is that every one of us in this room needs to find our purpose and our passion if we don't know it. And sometimes that purpose and that passion shifts if you're open-minded. Because we know that Dr. King, early on, he knew as a teenager, I want to be a servant. But when he graduated and got with his PhD, when he finished his PhD, he simply wanted to be with his wife, Coretta Scott King, and have a family, have a little church. He did not have any vision of being the leader of the most important movement in American history. But those of us who grew up in the black church, the way I did, know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you can't control when you're called. You're just called to do something, and you have an obligation to do it. And Dr. King was called to Montgomery, Alabama, and it happened to be 2 years after the famous Supreme Court decision, Brown versus Board of Education, which had an effect on this country, even though we're still segregated. It was a year after, or the same year actually, that a little black boy from Chicago, Illinois named Emmett Till went to Mississippi and allegedly whistled or said something inappropriate, allegedly, to a white sister, and he was brutally beaten and killed. This Montgomery bus boycott, we're talking about economic justice. Well, we're not gonna use your economic system any longer if you're not gonna be just toward us. And I need to say this to y'all, City of Columbia, because I also have run for Congress twice. I was a political science major in college. I think about development a lot. I think about community building a lot. And if we are courageous enough here in Columbia, Missouri to acknowledge that, hey, there was a thriving black community here back in the day, and then someone got greedy and destroyed it, my suggestion as an action step, Mr. City Manager and everyone here, is not just to name a street after someone, but there should be economic reparations to that community for what happened to that community. Because guess what? Everywhere I've been in America, it's the same story of how highways or stadiums or something was built where there were black or Latino communities and the black folks were displaced, and then all we can say is, hey, that was wrong. Let's make sure we have a plaque here. I'm like, no, because when you put that highway or that sports arena through that community, you help to perpetuate the generations of poverty that people like me were born into. Yeah, you did. So if we were serious about addressing racism, that's how you address racism. That's how you address classism. Because that's what Dr. King was about at the end of his life. He said that we needed a radical redistribution of wealth. That's in his speech. Don't get stuck on the I have a dream speech, because people will make you think that he was just talking about a colorblind society. No, Dr. King was not an either or. He was a black man and he was a human being. He was black in the sense that he was rooted in the black cultural traditions of the church, the black way of speaking, our dialects, our vernacular, but he also understood we are all sisters and brothers. We all bring something to the table of the human family. Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics will come together and sing in the words of the Negro spiritual. What he was saying when he referenced Negro spiritual, one of the most important gifts that black folks have ever given this country. There would be no Elvis, there'd be no Nelly if it wasn't for black music. So find your purpose. In other words, we also got to be students and learners for the rest of our lives. We got to be students. If any of this stuff is foreign that we've heard today, we have a responsibility. When I was in Wales, when I was in England a couple months ago, when I've been in Japan, when I was in Africa, when I travel around the world, it hurts my heart that people in other places know more about us, America, and our history than many of us do. And then we're embarrassed. When certain people become president of the United States, you shouldn't be embarrassed because you helped to put him there because you didn't even bother to take seriously your own education and the education of people around you or people who look like you, and it's not enough. It's not enough, if we're talking about action steps, to say, hey, I'm Kevin Powell, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, son. That's how we talk in New York, son, right? I represent New York City. I also have a responsibility to say, my work can't just be in New York City where people think like I do. I gotta go to upstate New York. It's not enough to say I'm gonna do this work in Columbia, Missouri. I gotta think about the rest of Missouri, who does not think the way I do. That's my challenge. What are you willing to do as a white person, as a person of color, as a man, as a woman, however you identify yourself with your multiple identities, not just to have conversations with people who think like you, but have those conversations with people who have been grossly miseducated and spread the kind of fear and ignorance that has been there from the beginning of this country's founding. What are you willing to do? We have to understand that fear is a prison. Dr. King was scared. 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. 1964, the Civil Rights Bill was passed. 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed. But in 65, something profound happened. It was called the Watts Rebellion, the Watts Riots. Dr. King went out to Los Angeles, where Watts is. You can watch it on YouTube. Watch it on YouTube. Watch it on YouTube. Dr. King is being yelled at by young black folks who say, get out of here, Dr. King. You don't understand what we're going through. Dr. King, because he was a selfless leader, he was humble. He was so humble when he won that Nobel Peace Prize, y'all. Unlike some of our politicians and preachers who stand up and give speeches for over and over and over again, and always about them and their money and their material things and their status and their resumes, Dr. King gave every penny of that Nobel Peace Prize back to the Civil Rights Movement because he didn't want to appear to benefit from the Civil Rights Movement. Look it up. Yes, he did do that. Dr. King understood we got to practice a dangerous kind of selflessness, and so he listened to those folks with humility in Los Angeles. 1 year later, 1966, he's in Chicago, on the west side of Chicago, because he wanted to highlight, Mr. City Manager, poverty. Poverty. This man didn't have to do that. He could have lived. But someone said it today, we may have to make sacrifices. There's no justice. There's no arc bending toward justice if we're not willing to be uncomfortable sometimes. That's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. So Dr. King was constantly changing, constantly questioning himself. And so what I'm saying to you all with all due love and respect, is that know who you are. We do a disservice to Dr. King's life and legacy every year if between now and 2019, we don't take the time to say, like I asked the Irish American sister, I said, well, how many generations have you been, in this particular community? She couldn't even figure, she didn't even know. I said, we have a responsibility. You gotta know who you are. You can't talk about diversity if you don't know what you're bringing to the table of diversity. You know what I mean? As an African American, as an African person, I'm like, yeah, man, my people created the traffic light y'all be stopping at when you drive in your cars and you leave here, Yeah, man, my people were the first winners of the Kentucky Derby horse racing back in the 1800s. Why? Because slavery had just ended, and who was working with those horses mostly? Black people, man. You know what I mean? Yeah, I love Serena Williams, but there's no Serena Williams without all the great athletes who came before her, y'all. You know what I'm saying? People with names like Paul Robeson. Y'all with me out there? There's no LeBron James if there's no Bill Russell. There's no free agency in sports if there's no man named Kurt Flood, who played for the St. Louis Cardinals, a black man. As I listened to the Star Spangled Banner, when I heard Miss Cox, where's Miss Cox at, who sang that song so powerfully? Where's she at? Where's she at? Where's she at? When she sang that song, it made me think about how Whitney Houston sang that song, how Marvin Gaye sang that song, how Mahalia Jackson sang that song, because when black folks sing the national anthem, we are as American as anybody else, but we're also saying in our profound way, this is our interpretation because we've seen some things. And just like I will never know what it's like to be a woman, you'll never know what it's like to be me. And so we've got to develop what Dr. King had: empathy and compassion. You don't have diversity and inclusion if there's not empathy and compassion. And you don't have diversity and inclusion if there's no love. Consistent love. When I was younger, intellectually. I used to think Dr. King was corny, that he was soft, that he was a sucker. I'm like, man, I wouldn't follow him. I'm with Malcolm X all the way over here. But I realized as I began to study Dr. King in a different way, watching documentaries like Citizen King, reading probably the best collection of his speeches and writings called Testament of Hope, edited by James Washington, that this man and those people were profoundly courageous for what they did. Courageous. And to have love in the face of hate, to have love in the face of hate, to call for nonviolence in the face of violence, to call for peace in the face of war. It makes me think about something Dr. King was saying at the end of his life, that we as America need to be born again. Because here we are again. This year marks 50 years since Dr. King and a great Irish-American brother named Bobby Kennedy were killed. And at the end of their lives, they both were basically saying the same thing, a white brother and a black brother, that we've got to have empathy and compassion and love, but these have got to be action words, y'all. You can't just say it. And like someone said, the mayor said, I believe, you can't just do it every year for this celebration. What are you going to do between these times? What are you willing to read, willing to study so that you can be a better human being? Are you willing to challenge whatever privilege, not just biases, what privilege you have? And understand there's nothing wrong with privilege in the spirit of Dr. King if your privilege is being used in service to other people. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Let's go forward. Let's go forward. This is the footnote for me. My mother, who I'm going to go see tomorrow, take her grocery shopping on Wiki grocery trip, pardon me. She's a senior now. She didn't get an opportunity to have the life that she wanted to have because of the racism and the sexism and the classism she's had to deal with her entire life. The worst thing that I can do, that any of us can do, is be on this earth and not do something significant to strike blows for freedom, not just for ourselves, but for all people. God bless y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Powell, for being a part of our community's celebration and for sharing your words with us. Please join Kevin for a book signing in the Expo Center's breezeway located to your right following the conclusion of the event. Books are available for purchase courtesy of Barnes & Noble. This concludes the 2018 Columbia Values Diversity Celebration. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We look forward to seeing you next year.